This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Thursday. How's everybody doing today? I don't know if I said it on the 1st yesterday, but Happy New Year. Happy New Year. 2025 is here. And with that being said, precious metals can be thought of as the ultimate insurance policy against economic uncertainty and government incompetence, with deficit spending and fiscal irresponsibility unlikely to end anytime soon. Now is the time to protect a portion of your hard-earned savings with a form of money that has been recognized for thousands of years. I'm talking silver and gold. I'm talking Silver Gold Bull. They are my go-to for precious metals with their complete in-house solutions, whether buying, selling, storing, or adding precious metals to your retirement accounts. They have a new feature exclusively for you that allows you to buy Royal Canadian Mint silver coins for the same price as a generic silver round. Just text or email Grahame for some details down in the show notes. He'll get you squared away. McGowan Professional Chartered Accountants. Yes, we're talking about Chris McGowan. Of course, this past year she ran and became board trustee of the Northwest School Division. She also, in the daytime, when she's not fighting crime and saving the world, offers accounting and bookkeeping, business consulting and training, financial planning and tax planning, and she's always looking for good people. So if you know of somebody out there that is a good person, that could fit, a talented person is probably the better word, plus a good person, that could fit McGowan CPA, maybe direct them that way. For all your for more information, go to McGowanCPA.ca. The Cornerstone Forum, well, 2025, it's heading this year in months, May 10th. That isn't that far away anymore, to Winsport in Calgary. And Martin Armstrong was the big news over New Year's to Christmas, confirmed, going to be live in person. So the CEO of Armstrong Economics is going to be there. Tom Luongo of Gold, Goats, and Guns, of course, he's going to be followed and turned by Alex Kreiner Analytics. So those two are reprising their roles on the stage. It's going to be a lot of fun. Chuck Prodnick, I think, a very popular guest here on the SNP. Retired from the Canadian military. Got a lot of respect for Chuck Prodnick. Got newcomers Kalen Ford, founder of Alberta Classical Academy. Chase Barber, the founder of Edison Motors. Matt Arrett, the Untold History of Canada book series. You got Ben Perrin, host of BTC Sessions. Rod Giltaca, the CEO of Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights. And we got a couple others in the works as well. We got guest hosts this year. Chris Sims coming back from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. And Tom Bodrovics from Palisade Gold Radio. He's going to be new and on stage as well. The big news this week is you can go buy their tables. Everybody's been waiting for that. So if you want to sit with Tom Luongo, if you want to go buy the table with Alex Kreiner, now is your time. These were a hot commodity last year. They went awfully quick. So if you've been waiting for that, they are available now, and there's going to be more details unfolding here in the next couple of weeks as we get square away the hotel, which has been just a saga, but it's coming to an end, I think. And then details on the trade show. So if you're a business wanting to come and showcase some of what you do, that's going to be coming up here right away. There's going to be a way to learn all about it. Now, the other big news this coming next week, I guess, is we're starting the building of the new podcast studio. So that has been something I've been talking a little bit about here and there. On the year in review, we talked about it a bit more. And basically, I want you to be a part of it. The journey of this podcast has had all of you along for the ride. And so there's many ways you can be a part of it. If you're, a skilled, you're an electrician, you're a carpenter, you get the point. We need that. If you just want to be, me, I'm a good laborer. I can put a nail in something. I'm usually better at tearing things out. I can use that too. And another way is companies have been like, well, listen, you're going to need some materials. So when it comes to, electrical stuff, Drew McKay, for instance, AMC Electrical, it's just like, well, we'll supply the stuff in order to make sure that you can have the proper, lighting, et cetera, when it comes to running the lines and everything else. Or the simple other way is money. You can just e-transfer. That's down in the show notes. And what you get for it is I think it's value for value. I want you to be a part of it, which means, like you see yourself a part of the SNP. So I'm building a wall in the new studio. It's going to be a big SNP, and then all the people who've been contributors, or I got to think of the word. Maybe you guys can help with the word. I think of contributor, but that doesn't sound right. Either way, it doesn't matter. Your company logo, your name, you get it. I kind of learned this from my first deal I ever made with Carly Clausen and Windsor Plywood. I went in and got him I needed a table for the studio. And he's like, well, what do I get out of it? And I'm like, well, if I ever quit podcasting, you can have the table back. Now, I don't think anybody's going to want a piece of glass with an SNP logo and their name on it. Who knows? Maybe they will. But certainly, on the flip side is if I continue to do this, which I hope I do, your name will be there for, the long the duration of the SNP. I'm going to build a wall that's going to be something to remember, and I hope whenever I bring in the different names of guests that they'll be able to look up and see and be like, who are all these people? Like, well, this is home. These are the people who've been along for the ride. And if that's one of you, I've already got a few. Louis Stang, Kevin Damon, Tom Eichert. They've all e-transferred. So my hat's off to you fine gentlemen for coming along for the ride. And I honestly can't wait for this new studio to be done. Danray Paving, Guardian Plumbing and Heating, AMC Electrical, Noble Floor Coverings, Renegade Acres, T-Bar One Trucking, Genix. There's a whole bunch of companies. So if you're a company and you're like, oh, we could get involved, there's some creative ways. And I'll be unfolding this, after talking with Ken on the year in review. I feel like there's probably a little bit more I have to lay out so that everybody can get a better picture. But I guess it's a value for value idea. And I just want you to be a part of the ride. You've all been a part of the ride for a very long time. And I think this is a way to, kind of cement it in for the next however many years we go. And so if you want to see what is happening with the studio, subscribe to Substack. It's free, and we'll be posting pictures and different things there as we go along. It's going to be a ton of fun. And I hope you'll come along for the ride. Now, if you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, share with a friend. If you're watching on X, yes, I'm staring at you, then how about a retweet? Let's get through some of these barriers that are certainly up against all of us. And if you're on Facebook, share with a friend or share on your, just share it. Okay, let's get on to that tale. Oh, wait, before I get to the tail of the tape, people are probably wondering, who is this guy? I got asked to do a legacy interview on him. And I came in, sat down, and I was like, we started talking, and at the end, you're going to hear it, but I'm like, that was something. And I sat and thought about it for like 2 months. I'm like, should I just ask him if I can release it? I should just ask him if I can release it. I'm going to ask him if I can release it. So finally, I'm like, I'm just going to ask him if I can release it. So I asked his daughter, and then I asked him, and, now you get to hear it. But this was a legacy interview I did, and I just enjoyed the conversation to the point where I'm finally like, I enjoy all the legacy interview conversations. I should point that out, and maybe part of the thing about doing a legacy interview would be, hey, is there opportunity to release it on the podcast? Because they've been spectacular. But, I sat in this one in studio, and at the end of it, I was just like, what the heck happened there? I don't know. Maybe you'll hear the same thing. Maybe it's just for me. Who knows? Let's get on to that tale of the tape. He's a husband, father, community pillar. I'm talking about Alfred Wayne Fleming. So buckle up. Here we go. Awkward, almost uncomfortable. I was kind of like, this is weird. Yeah. And yet I look back on it, and I'm like, that was a really important moment, pretty cool moment. And to get him in here and allow him to sit and chat and tell his story was... Well,
that was all planned.
You think?
You realize it or not, the more you look back at, the more there is to see, and the more you see his hand in it.
Yeah.
I found that, especially... it's the things that happened to get me to that point. I mean, it was all a matter of a build-up over the years, And you go through life, and all of a sudden you realize there's got to be more to it than this, and that's how it turned out for me to get here. But and then I look back at some of my family members and my grandparents, my parents, and what they went through. I mean, Granddad and Granny homesteaded where I live now in 1910. So you can imagine what that was like back then compared to what it is now.
Yeah.
And came here with nothing and made a go of it. That was quite a deal how they homesteaded. I mean, Granddad and Granny came to Canada in 1904, and they settled in Toronto. They'd been there for a while, and then Granny was expecting, and of course, new country, trusted old doctor, went back home to Ireland. It was a terrible, rough voyage, and she got back. I think they were 7 days on the ship or something, rough seas, and she was sick the whole way, and ended up lost the baby. It was a little girl, and they called her Mary, but that was stillborn. So that was a change in direction of the family kind of deal. And then when she came back, and Dad was born in 1907, but before that, she was going to go back over to Ireland again, and Dad said, no, there's doctors or Granddad said, there's doctors in Toronto. And so Dad was born there, and then Granny and him, I believe it was about 1908 or 10. He was about just not over 2 years old, and they got rheumatic fever and nearly died, both of them. And Granny, because of that, she had no more children, and Dad had suffered with right down to the end. He had terrible rheumatic fever, and right when they lost, the doctor said, that was caused by that high fever as a child, because none of our family members they still have, everything was functioning. But how they homesteaded, and Granddad was he was a carpenter by trade, but he'd come over here, and then he got a job where he was, and he was working down at the docks. And I think that would have been spring of 1910 or somewhere in there. And he got in a disagreement with the foreman. The foreman was an Englishman, and Granddad was Irish, and he called him a Mick, and Granddad took offense to that. And so he gave him a swat, and he was unemployed. So then he be telegraphed or whatever, he got a hold. He had two brothers that were working. They were in Calgary, and it was Archie and Hugh. And he got a hold of them, and they'd come from a farm in Ireland, and he said, well, how about getting some homestead quarters? So they come up to where Hugh and Archie came up to where we are now, and they filed on 3 quarters. And they filed on one for Granddad, the one I'm on, and they filed on one for Hugh and one for Archie. Well, then Hugh, he decided he went back. He owned stores down in a business in Calgary, and he went back and he was staying there. So, but they had another brother, John, in Ireland, and things over there were tough, and so he came over and took that quarter. And Archie, in the meantime, he'd gone out to BC just to see, rather than going back to Calgary, he went out to BC and he got on the island, and then he sent a telegram or notice back to him that, I'm staying here. He said, you don't live in Alberta, you just exist out there. Because he was like that Irish, Ireland weather was closer to Vancouver Island than what he was used to out here. So they dropped the 1 quarter, but anyhow, that's how it all started, was to get here. And then my mother's folks, they came over in 1919, I believe it was, and that was from England, and they give a script like he'd been in World War I, and they had a script quarter, and they come here, and they came here with...
A script quarter? So they got given land for fighting in World War I?
Yes. That was some of how the soldiers were paid for it was
I don't know if I knew that.
Army script quarter. Yeah. There was quite a bit of it went on, and of course, it was free land. Well, it wasn't free. I mean, there was work ahead of them, and they came over, and they were really dirt poor. And
well, if you think back to coming from Britain, let's say, you're going to be a landowner. That sounds like something.
Yep.
And then to come here and see it and deal with minus 40 weather. Actually, I interviewed a 99-year-old a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
and he remembers minus 66. And you go, maybe being back over in Ireland doesn't sound so bad.
Doesn't sound so bad. Yeah. Yeah, it was different. We did see some cold weather, too, in our time. Cold last winter was some real cold ones, too. But, yeah, that was quite a deal to get here. We take that for granted, what they went through to get here. I mean, they went through some tough times. Dad always talked about, and he would only been about 12 years old. He said, 1918, 1919. He said that was the worst year. That was worse than anything they'd seen in the 30s, because the people had gone in, and up until that time, the cows free ranged and cattle free ranged and out in the wintertime, and they didn't really put up a lot of feed. And the winter of 18 and 19 was a terrible winter. And they'd gone into it with no feed. And he said most of the neighbors, I know our neighbors that to the north there, we have the land now. Granddad bought it off them, but Mitchell's. And they went into the winter with 117 head of cattle. And they came out the other end, I think it was 4 or 5. It all died from starvation. And Granddad, I don't think they lost too many, but he'd rigged up, when it got into March, and he rigged up an old sleigh, and he put a kind of a V plow on the side of it, went across some hilltops and brushed off some prairie wolves so the cows could eat some. But you remember he went up to Manville. That was the town at that time was where they did most of the business. Went up to Manville, and the carloads of feed were coming in from Saskatchewan, square bales on it. And he went up there, and I don't know how many was lined up, but anyway, he spent all day up there and come home with 3 bales. And so I think he did that before they did the thing to clean off the snow, because they knew they had to do something. And the neighbor, Bill Matthews, the last month, he ran around to all the sloughs and cut the sapling red willows, and he got this cows around red willows. We don't, you can't even fathom stuff like that right now, but yeah. So it was a journey to get here.
Do you think, do you ever think, when you look at the world today, because you would have lived through the 80s and the high interest rates and all those things, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, but you look at where we're sitting right now, October 24th, 2024, and you look at where we're heading into, and it feels, actually I shouldn't say it feels, to me it resembles, as a younger man, the 80s. Certainly the stories I've been told about it weren't great. You look at how much money the government spent and inflation and on, and the housing crisis and all these different things. Do you see hard days ahead?
I believe yes, I do. We're kind of sleepwalking here right now, I think. Because everything we're taking so much for granted, and just, I don't want to go back that far. I mean, just what the world has done in the last 10 years or 15 years. I mean, where are we gone? And just the cost of everything. Like, you go buy a combine now or a tractor, and it isn't that many years ago the guy sold out the farm. He got $1 million, thought he was done. He could rest for life. Now it costs you that to buy a new combine or a tractor. It's I don't know. I'm no prophet, but it sure does. I think there's a lot of coldness out there. I find that just ignoring what's truly happening. I think between Canada and the United States in World War II, Canada lost 45,000 soldiers. The United States was a little over 300,000 soldiers they lost. Well, I believe this war in Ukraine has taken close to 750,000, and it barely makes their eyebrows go up. And it's and I don't know, the value we seem to put on life has sure dropped. To me, some of the things you see go on that normal, my granny and granddad would just be shaking their head, and whoever thought we'd be seeing a child's life worth nothing, absolutely thrown out like garbage. And that's what kind of stuff that is, you can't get used to that. And if you do, there's something wrong, to my mind. But to get here financially, I don't know. I mean, I've never handled so many dollars. But they go faster than they ever used to. They give you calluses trying to get rid of them, and you go through, but the 80s, we come into the 80s, you come through the 70s, and then a quarter of land at the beginning of the 70s, about 1970 to 1980, went up, probably the value went up close to 10 times. It was really insane. And then the poor people that sold out in the first part of the 70s and thinking they had her made, well, by the end of the 70s, they were out working and finding a job and nothing to show for what they'd done. And some of them been on farms for, 50 years and sell her out and retire, and they ended up scratching to make the end. So, and the interest rates, those were killers. We paid 20-some% in interest on, and I think it was 18 3/4 was our highest machinery one. But if you went behind on a bill anywhere, I mean, it was crazy the amount of money and interest you paid. But same token, the machinery wasn't worth quite that much. But yeah, costs and the way of farming was really changed through the 80s and up into the 90s. We went from everything was black and dust was rolling to now it's no-till and spray, and you rely on chemicals so much to do this and that. So yeah, it was different times. Judy and I were married in 1970. I bought a quarter of land for $8,000, and there was some of the best quarters of land around there were selling for 12, 13, maybe 15. And look at it now, it's $1 million plus. Is it worth more? No, I think the dollar's worth less. That's the biggest thing. Whoever dreamt you're going to get and buy a tricked up pickup truck for close to $100,000. My first one, Dad bought one, and I got my driver's license. I think it was 17. It was a 1968 Ford Ranger pickup truck, and it was $3,200. It had chrome package on it too. No air conditioner, nothing like that. But if you got a real tricked one, it was about $6,000. That's quite a difference from now. Yeah. Well.
What year did you take over the farm? Like, start actually worrying about things?
Yeah, well, I what? Worry? I was I completed grade 10 and then come home, and I was spring of '67. I was 16, and I left, come home full time, and it was
So 1966?
It was 1967, the spring of '67, when it was March of '67 when a teacher pulled me aside and said, it'd be better off for everybody involved if you weren't here. So, but
They said.
Yeah, she said more than that. But anyway, and I got down. There was a couple of weeks left in school, and they pulled me aside. They weren't going to let me write my final exam. So, and I said, well, that's not right. So, kind of had to make an unwritten promise that I wouldn't return. And they let me write.
You realize you're the second man of your generation to tell me that? That the teachers literally said, you're probably better off if you didn't come back.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if a teacher said that today? They'd be out of a job.
Yeah, they'd be out of a job.
And then some, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, but at that time in like the small schools, and the little school in Irma, we had over 400 students in there at one time back in that days because there were lots of kids. But they aimed for the ones that were taking matriculation and going on to university, and the ones that were just, well, it was an exact quote was, or you're just going to farm anyway. So, and I was. I didn't disagree with them. And it was a big relief when I walked out that door that day. I can still remember that. And, so that was... But yeah, you're right. It's different. I look at some of the stuff that kids can do in school now, and man, we had a thing back then they called the strap, and that was a real fun experience. But you listened, you know, you didn't, depending on what time of day it was, but you didn't pick up a pen for the rest of the day because your hands were shaking so bad, and went through that a few times. But anyway,
What would you have to do to get the strap? Like, as a kid, what did you do to tick the teacher off that much to get the strap?
well, the one out at Albert and Mrs. Armitage was teacher there, and I deserved every bit of it because I'd been horsing around, and I was told that you can't use the washrooms in the school. There was some still early outdoor biffies there, so I was sentenced to 2 weeks out there. And it was just about the last day of that 2 weeks, and I walked by then, and the door was open in the bathroom, and the guys were in there arguing, you can't put your fist through a window without getting caught, eh? Well, that's baloney. And I walked in and just boomed through the window and turned around and looked, and there was Mrs. Armitage standing right there. Said, yeah, we had an appointment right after dinner. So 10 on each hand. She could swing it pretty good, too. The one, we had a teacher in Irma, and he was a good teacher and liked them still. And he taught our kids afterwards, and Charlie Allen was his name. And we somehow got in a kerfuffle, and this was one that I wasn't involved in, but somehow or other, once you got the name, so they just threw me in for a bonus, and there was 4 other guys there. And they were none of them had a strap before, and Mr. Gunn was the principal, and we were all going to get 5 on each hand. And I listened to them, and they're laughing, and they're making these jokes about this and thinking this is something. You guys have never had this. So anyhow, the first one up was a fellow, George Webb, and they'd kind of make, whoever was that first up, you put your hand out, and just as it was going to hit, you just pull it back. Well, that's exactly what he did. And the strap came down and hit Mr. Gunn on the leg. And he said, you boys, you just wait here. Miss Charlie Allen, or Mr. Allen, was our vice principal. He was about 6'1", and he vibrated when he got mad. And he come through that door, and I'm thinking, boys, you're going to find out now. And we all got 10 on each hand. And I never forgot that one. But
What would your parents say when you came home and you'd been strapped?
She said, what happened to school happened at school. Take your medicine.
In today's world, we don't hear many of those stories. They don't get to the top of the news list, if you would.
Yeah, you're right. But it kept everything calm. I mean, you knew that was there to behave, and a trip to office wasn't a joy trip. So, yeah, that was school, country school. And then I spent, I was held back after grade 6 at Albert, so I got an extra year out in the country school and went through grade 6, and then it was up, when I first started there, it was up to grade 10 out in that country school where you were at Albert. And there was 4 classrooms there, and it was a bustle. There was 110 students or something like that out in that little school. And then it was grade 8 there, my first year of grade 6, and it was up to grade 8. And the end up, of course, you're 3 classes in one room, and my best friend was in grade 7. I think I spent more, I'm pretty sure if they'd have given me the test for grade 7, I'd have done better than I did for grade 6. But anyhow, got through that, and then the next year, that was when Mrs. Armitage taught the next year, and she's a great lady, and it was a privilege to have her as a teacher, but she set me straight a little bit. So, yeah, but school was different then, and the traveling, when ball was out in that country school, and we had a couple of ball diamonds, and that's what we wanted to play ball. That was there was no pool hall to go to at noon hour, and it was a different. You could see home from there, and it was all right for me. I think those are some of the best years. Or good years. I don't know if they're best or not, but they were good years. They left memories, and probably left memories of some school friends. And I had a young boy. He was in my class. And it was Gordy Savage, was his name. And he had muscular dystrophy. And, you couldn't figure out why he wasn't playing with the rest of us. But we played lots. Sat out in a sand pile and brought tractors from home and sitting there playing. But he got bad enough, and he didn't quite complete grade 3. And he was too crippling. And he was 16 when he died. And the other one, that one I said was a good friend, he was in a grade ahead of me. Well, that was Marvin Crouse. And he'd gone on to my last year at Albert, and he'd gone on to school in Irma in grade 8. And, of course, that was back when them little Honda 50 mopeds, motorbikes, and he had his learner's permit, and he got one of them, and they were joying. And him and some friends went down to the Battle River and by Fabian there, and he got tangled up in the river and drowned, and he was 14 years old. So that was two pretty good friends that left a mark. And I look back now, but there's a story with them too. I mean, I think I will see him again. Honestly, do. I talked to Gordon Savage. I talked to his mother, and she told me a story of that one. And she said the night they found out about him having muscular dystrophy, and my brother-in-law was principal at Albert at the time, and he was the one. This isn't right. There's something wrong here. So he went, and they were kind of mad and indignant because but then they got to check. Yeah, no. And anyway, she said, and I kept them home, and she schooled them. But the night they found out about him, or that day, or right in there, they were Catholic, and the Catholic priest came out to the house to visit them, and he sat them down on the kitchen table, and he said, you need to be born again. And she said, no, we prayed and asked Jesus into our hearts right there, and he said, everything changed. And she said, and I made sure he knew Jesus before he died. And she said, that changed everything right there. And then years later, they had another little boy. They had a big family, and their last one was David. And but darned if he didn't have muscular dystrophy too. And she said, I didn't let him go to school. She said, when we found that out, she said, I wanted to save her every moment of it. And she kept him home, and she taught him at home. But she said, and he was smart. He taught himself to read and write and everything. And she said, but he could do she told a story about his older brother Cecil was working on a car out in the front of the house, and he had the manual on the kitchen table, and David's in there, and he's reading over this thing, and he's in his teens by then, and Cecil comes in, and he said, well, you got to do this, and Cecil looked at him, well, you never even been around a vehicle. And he mussed around there, and his mom was telling me this, and Cecil fussed around that for half an hour, and finally he went out, what'd you say I had to do? And he went back out there, and the thing started. So just a real smart. But she said one day, he was thumbing through, of course that was before satellite, there was just a couple of channels, and he was going through the channels on the TV, and he come across, and he sat for half an hour and listened to Billy Grahame. And at the end of that, he gave his heart to Christ. And I said, now you see, it's all part of the plan. And,
if your family's listening to this, and we've been I've been enjoying this. But where we started off is I asked if you knew who I was, and you said you'd listened to one interview, and you couldn't remember whose man's testimony it was, and I started, in my head, I'm like, it's got to be like one of three, and it was Harold Steffen. And, one of the questions that I'd thrown out, and I don't know if you'd read through them all, but one of them was on, God, and whether or not faith is a part of your life and what your thoughts are on that. And obviously, but from where we've gotten to, I would say, yes, indeed, it is quite a large part.
It is now. You go to a grocery store and you check out the produce and you look for that best before date. Well, I have a best after date. It was 18 years ago this month, on 10th of October 2006. And we'd had a battle that summer. My daughter Rhonda's boy, Will, was diagnosed with cancer. And I believe we got the word of that. My mother died in March, 13th of March, 2004. I believe it was the 13th of March, 2006, that Rhonda and Rob come and said, well, we knew we had a tumor, and they'd got the word, and it was cancer. And so then there was a battle all that summer, ins and outs. But, we look back, and there was some tremendous things pulling on me at that time. And I know it was him. And I guess to relate back to that, I got to go back a little further, because when I was in grade 5 at Albert, then Mr. Masson came out from Irma with the Gideon Bibles and gave us a name and told us. But back then it wasn't just sneak in the door, maybe give him at lunchtime or something. He taught us the whole class. And before he'd left, and I was, wow, that's what. And I'd actually that night, and I asked him into my heart. But things get in the road, and I was preoccupied, I guess, being the clown of the class, and got into an argument in grade 8. They started teaching. Well, they were teaching it before we got there, but the evolution thing. Well, I really like science, and then I said, well, the scientist said that's what it's got to be. And I remember I got in an argument with a fellow in our class, and because I was basically the one on that side, and I liked to argue. Anyhow, we argued, and finally, after a while, and his name was George Grahame. He said, Fleming, he said, you can believe what you want, but I ain't related to no dang ape. He said, I'm made fearfully and wonderfully in the image of God. Never forgot that. Well, when he graduated in 69, my wife Judy she was in grade 12, and together with him and us, we were together in class, and that summer, he stopped on Highway 17 out here to help a lady change a tire, and got struck down. The vehicle blew by and hit him. And I thought of that. Wow. That the day the light came on for me, I thought, George, you were right. So, yeah. So anyhow, we went through that all summer and through that summer, but there was some.
You said there was tremendous things pulling on you. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, up until that time, the farm was number one. And, you're going to do this. There's more work tomorrow, and get her done, and get her done, and get her done. And then all of a sudden, when we got that diagnosis, hey, what's going on here? Life doesn't just go on. There's something got to be going on. The night we got that word, I slept on a easy chair downstairs because my back was bothering me. Sometimes you do dumb things on the farm, and I had a sore back, and I was sitting there, and I was sleeping, and that was about 2 a.m. I don't know how for sure, but it was 2 a.m, and my mother's voice came to me, as clear as a bell. She said, "Don't worry, Alfie, I will look after that little boy." And it startled me so much, and I jumped up, and I even turned on the light to look around the room and see whether she was there. And she was gone for 2 years, but and then after that, I couldn't tell anybody because he's not going to make it. So that was really pulling on my heart. And then, but I have my daughter-in-law, and her and Rhonda, they took, because Will, when he first started, he didn't have balance, and he lost his balance, and he was walking when he was not even 11 months old. He was walking, and all of a sudden he couldn't walk, and that's what triggered him onto it. But they got him in the hospital, and they got the tumor to shrink, and he got his balance back, and he got to come home for, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks, and it was probably one of the most wonderful 2 or 3 weeks you could ever imagine. But Rhonda and Lindsay and the kids went over to Camp Lake, and Lindsay's little girl was just a little bit older than Will. And she said, and when anyhow, I didn't go over with them, but I remember coming home, and Rhonda said to me, "It was just weird, Dad, you should have been there." She said, "Those two kids just wouldn't let go of each other. They were hugging, and and they did get a picture. It was one that Lindsay's little girl, well, there's Ray's her name, and she'd run up from the beach, and she turned and looked back. Well, Will could walk. He couldn't run anymore. He couldn't walk, and he was coming up, and she went running back down there and took him by the hand, led him up for hot dogs, and just, there was something going on there. There was something going on there. And then we got the hospital time, and you're going through all that, and then there was some things happening there that you just, I look back now, and I know it was we were sitting in there after we got downstairs, and the news was bad, and there were the whole families, both sides of families were gathered around this one table in the cafeteria. And just, of course, everybody's teared up, and there's a young girl, I presume she was a nursing student, come over, and she just said, do you look like you need some love? And she said a little brooch of a dove on the table, and she turned and walked away. And I think, well, we were up there all summer, nursing student. We'll bump into her again. Never saw her again. And I remember that, and there's a lot bigger things going on in life than we can ever imagine. But when things went the way they went, and I remember we walked out of there that morning, and there was the doctor that had been, and he was a good young doctor, and they were bound to sure they had everything. And he was standing off the side, and I think he was kind of scared to even come over and talk to us. And I went over to him, and I said, well, he said, there's a lot bigger things going on than we can see. And I remember turning around, and I said, where the heck did that come from? Why did I say that? And the same as said at the funeral, and then Pastor Howard, and we come out of there, and I went over and shook his hand, and said, it's not Will hurting now. And I'm thinking, where did that come from? But there's a few things. But there was one thing happened between the time that Will passed and before, and we were still farming. You're out in the combine. It was 3 days after, and out in the combine, and we were working on land over east of us. There were 2 combines. Judy was one, I'm another. And on that afternoon, we were picking up peas, which can be a pain, and they were, but going along, and I started to get a pain in my head. And it wasn't a headache, it was just a pain. And we worked there till about, I think it was about 6 o'clock at night, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I radioed Judy. I said, you've had enough of this fun, we can go home. And it was right there, just a powerful pain. And we got out of the combine, and I said, you got to drive, I can't drive. And we got halfway home, and it was gone, just like that. And that's where he showed me how much pain the boy was going through. And he's not gone, he just took the pain away, and he took him home. That's my honest-to-God belief. And so it was a month and 3 days later, after all the dust was kind of settling, And you're living like it's another day. It's another day. And it was a tough fall. We didn't have much combining done. This was here on into October, and I didn't have much combining done. And it was wet, and I was working on a auger for the grain dryer to take grain away from the dryer, because we were sitting, as soon as we get going, we're going to be drying. I was fighting that on the shop floor, and I'd come in for dinner, and walked back over to the shop after dinner, and sat down, and I was just sitting there, and I just got overwhelmed. And I sat down on a pail, and I said, I had my elbows on my knees, my head in my hands, and I was weeping. And I said, there's got to be more to life than this. There has to be more to life than this. And honestly, it was just that sudden. Then there was. His Spirit filled me, and I had no idea what was happening to me. Absolutely, what is going on? And then you get to go, I shouldn't feel this good. What's going on? And I had no idea what had just happened. So I'm up walking around the shop, and I think I've met God, but I don't know. But who is it? Who is it? Even the thought of Allah crossed, but who's God? Who's God? And finally, I walked up to the radio and brushed the dust off it, because it had been sat tuned to CFCW since I think I built the shop. And I brushed it off, and I'd stumbled across this channel over the years. You'd run out them at CJCA, and at that time they were Southern gospel music is what they played at that time. So I turned it on to that, and it was, I know it was 2:00, because at that time they did a little news blurb, but they did it before the hour, and the news hour was just finished up. And I'm standing there, and and on come this song. And it was a young, the Three Bridges sing the song now, and it's called In the Valley There's a Rock. And the closing line, in the valley there's a rock, and the rock is Jesus. And then I knew at that moment, I just met Jesus. So that was, I guess that's basically the journey to get to there. But there's been quite a journey since, and I know I brushed over stuff pretty quick, but it's
I'm just curious. This is the song then.
That's the song.
David wasn't always a king, just a boy in his teens, but he became a man. With that rock in his hand, he knew he wasn't alone. There was something about that stone when he put it in his sling, and God took care of everything. In the valley there's a rock, in the valley there's a rock, so hold your head up high, you don't have to cry. In the valley there's a rock, in the valley there's a rock, you don't have to worry when you're in the valley. Life can be a giant itself. Sometimes you need a little help, a solid rock to lean on. In the valley when all hope is gone, in the valley there's a rock. In the valley, in the valley there's a rock, in the valley there's a rock, so hold your head up high, you don't have to cry. In the valley there's a rock, in the valley there's a rock, you don't have to worry when you're in the valley. In the valley there's a rock, in the valley rock. So hold your head up high. You don't have to cry. In the valley there's a rock. In the valley there's a rock. You don't have to worry when you're in the valley. You don't have to worry.
Do you ever wonder, you know, one of the things that I struggle with doing these family, I don't know, chats,
Yeah.
is I'm like, you get entered into my brain, and I sit across from you, and I go, is this for your family? Is this for me? I have no idea. Maybe it's for all of us. But I wonder, how can we be so blind to what's going on? You know, because you talked about 2006. By that time, you're 56 years old.
Yeah. You figure that out, eh? You're right. You're right. And that was one of the biggest shocks. And I had, you know, and I had guys tell me, well, he'd lead me certain places, and you'd sit down and you'd talk with somebody that you didn't know you needed to talk to. Did that at an Irma days, and I ended up sitting by a fellow from right around there that I'd known for years, and down I told him, he looks at me like, and he was a pastor, and he said, "That's a miracle." He said, "That's a miracle." I said, "I know." it is. And it's just, I don't know. I think the further down you go, the harder, when he hits you, it's the hardest one. You know, I see some people, you know, they've known him all along or whatever, but when he hit me, wow, it was a euphoria that I can't even put into words, you know.
It's funny. I don't mean to interject on, you know, this conversation. Yeah. So forgive me to your family for because what I like to try and do is I like to let you just, you know. But I'm sitting here and I'm like, but I get it. I mean, I've had that similar thing happen in my life. Yeah. That's why I've changed my tune on the podcast. It's why I like a guy where, you know, Harold Steffen comes on and starts talking about me and an angel. I'm like, man, that's crazy in the best possible way.
Yeah.
You know, you see all the insanity of the world, but then you hear stories like that and you're like, but there's the beauty in it. If you just open your eyes, you'll start to see it. Yeah. You know, I picked up a homeless guy. It was this winter. It was one of that stretch where it was about -40.
Yeah.
And we have a group that meets at 5 a.m. on Thursdays. And he was in a place that made no sense. And I was having an argument with, at least I think I was having an argument with God. I'm sure he was just chuckling at me. But I was really struggling. I was reading the Bible. And I don't remember why I was so irritated with the book. But one of the things that friends, other men, had been sending me is don't be fearful. There's nothing to fear. Don't be fearful. And so anyways, I was driving and I was reading, which you shouldn't do, folks. I was reading the text about fearful and driving, and so I started to pray. So fine. So I was praying about it, and here's this homeless guy out on the Refinery Road, 4:50 in the morning. It is minus 40 something, and he was doing this like death drug-induced spiral in the middle of that road. Like if I didn't have, you know, if I'd been reading the text 2 minutes or 2 minutes later, probably would have ran him over. It just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I drove by him, and I'm not picking him up. I could hear the voice, you know, you should pick him up. No, I'm not picking him up. You should pick him up. I'm not picking him up. But at the same time, I was letting off the gas. I was slowing down because he's going, if you don't pick him up, he's going to die. So I went back. And, you know, in my brain, I'm going, just don't let him chop my head off or something, you know? Like, that'd be a really crappy way to go, you know? It's almost funny to think about. And he got in, and he was very thankful. He couldn't open his eyes. His eyes were just shut. He was just, I don't know where he was. And I took him to the hospital. And before he got out, I was telling him, I'm like, I was arguing with God about you. I didn't want to pick you up. I just said, you know, hoop it. I'll just tell him what I was thinking about. And he had, and I wish, you know, I say this every time. I wish I would have wrote it down. It was the most profound thing. He had me weeping by the time I got him to the hospital. And I said, dude, I don't know if me picking you up was for you or for me.
Yeah.
Right? I thought I was doing you the favor. I think now you've just, you know, and I'm like, nobody knows who the guy was. Now he's a homeless guy. I assume he was a homeless guy. I don't think he was an angel, folks. I just, at the same time, it's one of those experiences where you're like sitting here, and I'm sitting here with, you know, to your family. I'm sitting here in this chat and I'm going, what is going on? Because I walked in, I got my list of things, and then you start rattling that off, and I'm like, holy moly. And yet, I look at the world and I'm like, if you just open up your eye, you have no idea what every day could be, because those possibilities are sitting just everywhere. I just, I was just at OJ's in town the other day, and I've been trying to get a new studio. Now, it's a long story, which I won't bore your family with. Yeah. And just a couple of things happened, almost like boom, boom. I'm like, how's this? So I was going to the bathroom. I just prayed, thank you. Because you're working at all times, and I don't even realize it. Sometimes I just got to open my eyes to see it.
Yeah, not the truth.
Sometimes we just get going, you get so busy. I hate it. Right now I'm busy. I don't like that word because I know what it's doing, Like I was told once upon a time, I get your thoughts on this. When the devil can't get you, he makes you busy. He distracts you, pulls you away from the things in life that really, truly matter. And I feel it right now. Yeah. And I don't know how to slow down the train. It's really bugging me. Yeah. Maybe I'll lean on you. What advice do you have?
Well, that is a tough one. That is a tough one. And I fight that still, because there's the farm. There's always something to do. Always something to do. And you just you try to keep your priorities right. But when the thing is ready to go on the farm, it has to go. Whether it's seeding or whatever, and that's when it's time. And actually, it ends up in you kind of dread winter, but there's more peace in the wintertime. You get a chance to go watch kids play hockey, and you aren't rushing home because this has to be done. But that is a boundment, and you're right. This I don't think we've ever had this many squirrels in our lives as we do right now. And you're looking here and looking there, and everybody's got your iPhone, and that was something. I used to go to the field, and I didn't even wear a watch. You listen to the radio maybe, or you just get out and look at the sun. Or if you got hungry, it must be dinner time. But anyway, now you get 15 feet from the door, and I forgot my phone, and back you go. And that's really changed. But yeah, it has its upsides too. Like, look what you just pulled up. Like, you blew me away with that. I mean, just bang, just like that. You had that song on there.
Well, you've given that hopefully to your kids and your grandkids and everybody else, but you've given it to me too, because I'd never heard that song before. Yeah. I think it's a very powerful song, very powerful message.
It said exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah,
this is who you're looking for. He's the one. So, I had you look up through. I spent a lot of years coaching hockey and that, and I enjoyed that very much. I get time to spend time with kids. I think, I look back now, and when I get into coaching, and that little speech that teacher gave me, that helped my coaching. Because I come out of that, and I when I get into coaching, I said, I would never teach a kid like that, ever. And I tried to coach that I didn't play favorites. Everybody got a turn. And I figured if it wasn't good enough to get on the ice, you weren't running your practices right. And I had, so I looked and I tried to practice the best I could, and we had some pretty good teams. But that was the key. I think they became teams, and that's huge. You get that individualism out of there, and everybody's looking out for the guy beside him instead of himself, and that made huge difference. And well, Nancy, the one that pulled this on me, she was a big part of that. And then we had our midget team, and we ended up, we hosted midgets in Irma at that time, and we were hosts, so we didn't win to get in there either. We were hosts, but we got in there, and we won the silver medal. We lost out to a team in the last bit, but it was a close game, good game. It could have went either way. So, and the only year we weren't we didn't have big numbers. We were just under enough to get there. But the camaraderie, that team, it just gelled, and that was gratifying. And I had some other teams that I coached, but when they get up to that age, if you're in the midget age or U18, if you figured it out then, it's good to be in. You've got her figured. I mean, the little guys are used to Mom running in between periods with a soda pop or something, no, you can't do that. But yeah, that was probably the biggest thing, is teaching the kids to play as a team, and everybody. Your ability to play the game has nothing to do with your ability to enjoy it. Because I'm proof of that. Because I have stone hands. and limited ability, but I love the game, and so that was probably one of the highlights. And I'm very fortunate. The time we had 5 kids in hockey and ring at the same time, so that was a lot of this. But back then, I mean, if we went as far as Chauvin, that was a big deal. Now, I think this weekend I have a grandson who's going, he plays with, Gage plays with Karen's boy, and plays with the Polar Kings, and they're in Grand Prairie this weekend. And they have 2 games in Grand Prairie and 1 at Falher. That's a big weekend. They're taking a bus up, but we would never thought of it back in those days, driving this much and the cost of hockey and that. But cost of everything's going up, but I mean, more power to them, and they love the game, so they play it as team members. And then I have any I've watched, and none of my grandkids are selfish on the ice, and that's a big thing. Assist is as good as a goal. Our block shot's as good as a save, and it's. There's a lot of glamour in guys' eyes because you see the wages that guys are getting when you watch the screen, and we've had a few come out of Irma, like Carson Soucy's on with Vancouver there right now. But honest to goodness, you never meet a more humble family than Carson's, like Mike and Debbie, and just humble, and you'd never know. There's no, and that's the way he is too. So I enjoy those kind of guys. I don't like this when they score a goal and they run over and do a body check on the glass. That's hot dogging. But anyway, that's my opinion.
Who was your favorite hockey player growing up? Who'd you watch?
Way back, and that was Bobby Bond was the one for Toronto, and George
Bobby Bond?
Yeah, he was a defenseman. And George Armstrong. That's going way back. And but then up through there was Yvonne Cornway and him, and then Bobby Hull, and then Bobby Orr, of course. I mean,
you finally hit a couple names I recognized. I'm going Bobby Bond. I don't even know who that is.
Oh, you look him up. I think he scored 1 goal in his career, but he set a lot of people on the rear.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a tough defenseman for the Leafs, but yeah, we once watched a lot of your heroes were the local ones in town and on the Aces, and then some names there you respected, and
as a community, when you look back at that Irma area,
yeah.
Was there a project that got built in there that you were very proud of or big part of, or I don't know, anything that comes to mind from a community standpoint?
Project-wise, I think you can't narrow it down to one. I mean, I don't know of a community with that population that has been that generous to do things like, the arena and all that, and keep it going. And the curling rink is one of the class curling rink, and all, and ball diamonds and ball facility is just phenomenal. There's people come from the cities, and then they can't believe the ball diamonds we have there, and a lot of that is to do with the Soucy family. Mike's dad, Charlie, had put a lot of time in there, and the Gainies, Randy Gainey, his dad, and they spent a lot of time in there fixing stuff up all the time. So a lot of volunteers.
Yeah.
Irma's been good for volunteers. And community.
That doesn't happen by accident, though.
No, you're right.
I just think back, like where I come from, Helmond, community rink that they've had, you drive out there, here's this little tiny farming community, and then it's got now it's 2008, so what's that? 16 years old, I guess now.
Yeah.
But you walk in and you're like, how the heck does this school or this area have this? They got $1 million gym on the school. And you're like, how does this area? And, you know, when the community comes together, they are extremely powerful. It's honestly a superpower that the world's forgetting real fast. But in our areas, you just got to look in recent history, and you can see it all over the place. When you work together as a community, a lot of things are really possible.
Yep, exactly. And it makes it worthwhile. It gives you a community to be proud of. You're glad to be part of it. And Irma's always been pretty good that way. There's been, you know, the fundraisers that have come out of there just blow you away. And they did one for us when Will was in trouble, and there was 3 Fentons had lost a house to fire, and Greg Fisher's daughter was in trouble in the hospital at the same time as ours. We were up there, and there was a huge fundraising for that, and just they filled the arena for that fundraiser, and it was phenomenal. It just my daughter was and son-in-law Rob and Rhonda were just blown away by that. You know, you think everybody, you're just going through this, but that's the thing. You know, that's the beauty of a small community. I mean, there's sometimes you just feel, you're living under a magnifying glass, and you are. But then something like that happens. And, you want to stick your chest out. I'm from Irma. And it took me a long time to say that because I was from Albert first.
And Irma was the rival?
We played. I played fastball with Albert Royals, and the Irma Tigers. They were just, you'd sooner step on dirt in the road than that.
That's awesome.
It was. You can think back in those days. I mean, Albert was the last country school in that school district, outside of the Hutterites. That was the last country school, and at one time there was 26 of them. And every one of them had a ball diamond. They had Sunday picnics in the summertime, and there would be ball every time. So it was kind of in your blood. And when I first started playing, there was just, you'd have Passchendaele had a sports day there, and there was a little old school Roseberry, and they had one. They always celebrated on Farmers Day, which was Wednesday in the middle of the week, and you'd go there, and then the following weekend you'd go to Passchendaele and play ball there, and then there was, Irma was the middle one in the summer, and then North Irma was another little country picnic, and we had one out at Albert and over by the lake there, not right at the schoolyard. We had diamonds over by the lake. Amber's Lake. And like I said, we never drove. Edgerton, the Eagles played them lots, and Viking Coyotes and all. And that was our range, you know. You get down in Sedgwick, and that was getting out there. you didn't go. It was pretty good. I was fortunate. I played fastball in the heyday of fastball, as far as I'm concerned. There were so many teams that we didn't have to drive anywhere to play them. And there were some good friendly rivalries, but I said, now you look back and all those foes and enemies back then, they're part of your ring of friends. You remember that? You know, you get into those kind of,
yeah.
And
You've been married for
it'll be
54 years?
In November 7th it will be, yeah.
How did you meet your wife?
We were in the same grade at school, kind of there, and I told you about that last journey out of school, and I come home that night, and the kids from the grade were going to get together over to Amber's Lake let's go have a brownie. I didn't know if I could be allowed to go and this, so, and I get home, and there's a vehicle sitting up in front of the house, and I didn't recognize it. And you get in the house, and here's my mom's sister, Joan. My Aunt Joan was there, and she was visiting Mom. So I said to them something about, they're going to wiener roast and that and some fun down at the lake tonight. And Mom said, Mom was deathly scared of water, and she was scared of it. Go near the water. Anyway, but there was nothing to do. But anyhow, and Joan said, come on, Peg. She said, you better let him go. Only young once. So, and I don't remember how I got down. I might have rode the bike. I'm not sure how I got there. But anyway, I got down there, and we got kind of connected that night. That was longest June 21st, and then it was 1967. So that was basically our first date, and then it kind of went from there. Well, it didn't get real serious for another year or more. But that was the hookup. That was the hookup. Nice. I still remember that, and so does she. So that's a good thing.
What year did you get married?
1970.
In Irma?
Yes, in Irma. United Church in Irma, and the dance was at the North Irma Hall, which was a North Irma school, and it was probably twice the size of this room here.
Pretty small
it
little
was,
venue.
It was small. There was many people standing outside. The stag line was outside and all that. Yeah. And but been quite a journey. The kids have been. You look back now, and there's nothing I wouldn't change anything, really. We've got the family, and that's your biggest joy right now, is your family, and you're watching, and you're hoping they do this, and hoping they do that, and hope they fall over a pail and find the path. That's the most important thing. But that's their hands, the same as yours, mine. We all got to find that path. But yeah, and there's been some tough times, and there's been some good times, and it's funny how it is. I think you learned a lot more in the tough times you did in the good ones. And the 80s, we went to farm through all the 70s were wet, and the 80s were dry, and you got into there, and there were some pretty short crops, and you got interest to the roof, and in the 90s were dry. We were by the end of the night, we were drilling wells, because there was no sloughs for the cows, and we were drilling wells. And 98 was a really dry year, and that one hit. But 96, 97, that was really wet. That year, and I spent the winter, 96, 97, I spent the winter in town at the UDG, drying grain. Had a friend, Charlie Susie, run the elevator, and he phoned me up, and that was in 1st October, somewhere right around there, said, would you be interested in coming in and drying grain? Ooh, I don't know, we're not done combining here yet. Well, you think about it. So we did finish up, and he was on the phone. You got to get in there. So I did go in, took it in there, and that little old dryer, and then I got in there, and holy smokes! So we added some tiers onto it so it dry faster, and got through that, and we dried just right around 750,000 bushels that winter, and but the check we got from that kind of helped with the bills on the farm, and it pulled us through. 98, like I said, was a dry year, and we had that little bit of a cushion. It was still, you had to have one of those experiences sitting at the other side of the desk with a banker, to hat in hand, to kind of get through that one. That we did, but it was that was a tough year, and right up, and then it stayed, and then, I don't know whether you were not being in the farm. Everybody remembers 02, because we didn't. First time since I started farming, we never combined a bushel. There was nothing. It was dried right out, and that had never happened before in my lifetime. And then but well, in 02, we got through that, and of course there was a little feed to put up in the fall, because there was second growth. We got some rain in August and that, but there was nothing, not much. So we made the brilliant decision, well, we're going to go out in Saskatchewan, because we'd gone on a drive and seen there was some good, and buy some straw. At least we can pull the cows through the winter. And I don't know why we drove so far, but anyhow, we ended up buying bales and taking the Holland tractor and baler down to Odessa, Saskatchewan, which is east of Regina. And we baled up 800 bales down there. It was 805 clicks round trip, or one way. 1,600 clicks for a load of bales. And the boys, and Wayne was married, but then Lindsay was with him. And then they made some trips down there. That was a wow. We got it home, saved the herd, and then that spring of 03, the BSE hit. So the herd you'd ripped your guts out to save was worth nothing. Basically worth nothing. We shipped a load of cull cows. They went on to a little packing plant in Armstrong, BC. They were looking for cull cows. Nobody wanted them. And I got out there, and by the time we were done, by the time the trucking was paid, we got $100 a head for them.
So what advice, would you give to maybe not a brand new farmer, because certainly, in order to afford everything today, let's just assume you're farming, but you're new into it, but for the most part, you got the land, you got the cattle, you got the whatever. What advice would you give somebody when you're, you think times are good? I listened to everything you just said, and is there a way to prepare for BSE and drought, and because you basically said 1 year you didn't combine, there was nothing to combine, and it never happened before. So how can you prepare for the things that you can't fathom could happen?
Well, the one thing, was life insurance. Crop insurance really pulled us through on that one. And but how do you prepare for it? I don't know. The biggest thing is, I believe, is keep the debt down. Don't get, in which it seems to be a rare thing now, because there's a lot of new iron goes and a lot of that out, but I don't know. I would just, I guess when you get to know Granddad, Dad, and me, now that Wayne's and the boys are there, and Wayne and Joe are both farming, and that's another generation, and Wayne's boys are starting to help out now. One's 16, one's 14, they're helping on the farm. And so you're thinking, well, a generation, eh? And when Granddad came over here, like I said, came out here, he had nothing. He spent that first summer, he worked on the railroad as a carpenter, building station houses up the Irma line, right up through Leduc. And that was to earn enough money to buy a team so he could break more land. And his brother John, who said to come over to the other quarter, he broke 13 acres on our home place. He had a horse and an ox. That was the team, and broke that with a walking plow, 13 acres. And so the story says, Dad come in and he told Granny, John come in, told Granny, he said, well, I think it was 13 acres, 13 or 16. I can't remember exactly sure. And he told her, of course, they'd come from small farms around. He said, you never break another acre. That's all you'll ever need. Yeah. So you got to consider they came from a field was the size of a postage stamp where they came from, and the 13 acres was a big deal. Yeah. So times have changed, and but I look at and Granny and Granddad, and I never met Granddad. I was 11 months old when he died. A heart attack in the yard. Actually, he died right in the yard. And but just from the stories I've been told them, that I think that walk with the little girl, and they left in Ireland, I think that brought him and Granny to know the Lord. And right, we have my brother Hugh was a twin, but only he survived. His twin brother, or my brother, died at birth, the same thing, and I think cord around the neck. I can't remember exactly, but it was that there that eventually led my mother to know the Lord, because she battled with that for some time, and we had a conversation. I should have brought the poem and left with you, but we had a conversation in the garden. And she told me that journey, and we were over. We'd lived on the other side of the road where I live now, with where my brother lives now, and we were getting across because we were moving into the house where I am now, and we were getting the yard. And then the carpenter Harold Cockcroft was there doing renovations on the home. And we were out back, and we'd ripped up the garden, and we were planting the garden, and then she started telling me about what had happened, and I hadn't heard anything or very little about it. And she told me how it all went, and she said, and he's buried in our yard. If you go by there, there's a marker around it now. That time there wasn't. It was in the middle of the trees, and she told me about that and how that had played on her heart for a long time. And he was born in 1940. Well, in 19, I think it was 56, 57, 56. Our neighbors, the Hardys, and my brother Johnny's married to Barb, and she was a Hardy, so they had lost a little girl in a tragic accident on the farm, and I believe she got run over by a truck. And when Mom and Dad went to the funeral, and the mother's, Catherine, or Tid, she was known by, and she never broke down. She never broke down. And that just got Mom, and I don't know how she got together with her, but I think she walked over. Mom didn't drive. She had one experience with that. That was enough. So she didn't drive, but she walked over and visited Tid, and she said, "How did you do that?" And she just said, "I had to, because Ivan, okay, he was driving the truck, so he kind of blamed himself." And she said, "I couldn't break down for him," but she said, "I know Mary's with Jesus." And then Mom said, "Oh, I want that." So Tid let my mother to the Lord.
It's funny how he'll use anything, to pull people, to open their eyes.
Yeah. I had an incident here. I can't remember what year that was. It's probably close to 10 years ago now. And Joe and I were working on the drill down at the bottom of the hill, and getting ready to start seeding. And looking, there's this little car, and to come in we got a top gate and come down, and they come in and just come tootling down in behind the drill. And what's this about? And this young lady gets out of the car, and so I went over and talked to her, and she said, "I need gas." She said, "I've been on a voyage and trying to but I'm out of gas." And I looked at the sign up there, and I thought I was just about to Irma, and she was going into Irma. Well, Irma just has a card lock. It wouldn't help her anyhow. And she said, I looked, and it just still 42 clicks. Well, she'd read the sign wrong. The sign is 42 clicks to Viking, but it's only 20-some into Irma. But she read the side wrong, so she pulled in. And so I said, "Don't worry." I said, I'll get you some gas." So she went over there, and then I got talking to her what she was doing. Well, she said, I'm looking for some place. I have some sheep. I'm trying to get, I'm not making this up. She had a flock of sheep, and she was trying to, the landowner she had was, he had passed on, and the boy took over the land, and well, he wanted her out of there. And she was heading nowhere to go. She'd been up to the Peace River country and talked to a guy up there, and she said the guy had horses on it. She said it was pastured. All you could see, you barely see roots. There wasn't enough grass for anything. And then she said, and she'd come down, and there was another place she thought she might get a chance. And she had the name of the guy over by, I think she said Marween, or out in that country. And all she said, and he's different. That's all she said. And I said, so then she got telling me her story and how all things that she'd been through. And her father had beat her, and it was quite a tragic story. And she said, we were raised in church, but it was church on Sunday, but it wasn't on the week. And so she got pouring out, and then she'd got into drugs, she'd got into alcohol, and she was having a terrible go. And I said, we were sitting there by the fuel tanks, and I said, you see that? Because she was talking about how I should go into church or something. I said, you see that old shop there? She said, yeah. I said, well, that's my church. I said, that's where I met the Lord, was in there. And she said, really? So then I said, you just wait here. And I went and I had a New Testament in the house. I come back and give it to her. And I said, you know, he's looking after you. You wouldn't have pulled in here if he wasn't. And I don't know, when we were done, and I said, you just trust in him. Don't trust in all the other stuff. I said, and she gave me a hug with tears in her eyes. She said, my God, I needed to hear that. Those are some of the things that stick. And because she just came in out of the blue, and what's the odds of that happening? So, you know, he's involved in a lot of that stuff, and he knows, and now I know he's involved in everything I do. I just, sometimes I still do it wrong. And but Paul struggled with that too. I know the things I should do, but I do the things I shouldn't. That's an ad lib, but I mean, more or less what he says.
It's pretty much what he says. And if somebody who knew Jesus says that, you go, holy Mackinac.
Yeah.
This is something that's been wrestled with for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah.
If I may, before I get you out of here, I would love to know a couple more things. You know, one of them is I was asking about your wife, and when you do 54 years, soon to be, what's some of the lessons you've learned out of 54 years of marriage?
Well, she's the other miracle. She's put up with me for 54 years. Yeah. You know, I just, we'd try and do everything together. I mean, the kids are, she has been a miracle to me. I mean, she's, I don't know how to put it. She's just goes, and the kids adore her. What more can you ask for? And she loves the kids and the grandkids, and I think me too. So, and the further you get into it, I think the more you realize what you've got on the line. And it's the advice. I don't know. Do it as a pair. There's no yours and mine. It's ours. That's the biggest thing. Like, she does all our book work. And there was a time that I was out in the field and working, and that was the work, and now she's doing the book work, and I think, wow, I'm glad it's her. You know, there's like, you know, what you're handling for invoices and all the rest of that now compared to when we started out. It's we survived the first winter by eating rabbit stew and trap line, and yeah, no, that's the thing. Just don't think of it as yours and mine. Just think of it as ours. That's the most important thing. Is what's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours.
What's maybe your happiest day if you go back? I don't know if there is such a thing as the happiest day, but maybe a moment where you're like, you know, that was a pretty special time.
Yeah. Well, getting married was one of them, for sure. I don't know whether you can narrow it all down to one. The day the light come on, for sure. That was definitely probably a high-end one. And the special days, and maybe the day it doesn't even start out, do you think it's special, and you realize what you've got, and hey, all the other stuff isn't that important. You know.
Isn't that the adventure of life, is that once you realize it, the most mundane, what are we on, Thursday? The most mundane Thursday could be the best day of your life.
Yeah.
It's a pretty wild thought when you think about it. You think there's so many books that I've read that, you know, you get to the end of the book and the gold's back home. And it's kind of like a story arc. You know, at the end of the story, you realize where the gold is sitting at home. You don't need to go on some fancy adventure. You could literally step out your backyard. Yep. As you've pointed out, you know, one of the best days in your life happens in your yard. Like, think about that. I mean, don't get me wrong, the circumstances around it are pretty heavy.
Yep.
But it wasn't going to some, you know, I don't know. Hopefully you're an Edmonton Oilers fan. If you're Calgary Flames, we might have words in the studio. But, You think today going and spending thousands of dollars to go watch the Oilers play, or whatever sport you want, or whatever avenue you want. If you
isn't that something?
Isn't it?
You know what? You look at how far they made in the playoffs last year, but look what a ticket was worth to go sit and watch that. Like, just crazy. So, no, I just bought 2 season tickets for the Irma Aces. So I think that's pretty good. that's far enough for me. You don't mind the Aces, right?
What's funny is I had no, not at all. I actually have an Irma Aces hat.
Well,
so I had Blair Erickson live with us for a year.
Oh, for heaven's sakes!
And
you're still okay.
Irma, I think, has just like, I don't know what is it about the Aces logo. I just think it's awesome. I just think it's so well done. So I got an Irma Aces hat. I must have ragged on them for a full year. I really like an Irma Aces hat.
Yeah.
It's probably the only other community of hats where I can wear it. I proudly wear it because I'm like, well, I've had a billet kid from there. And he was a wonderful human being. And we'll wait and see where he goes. He's a giant.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got an Irma Aces hat. And so you got season tickets. That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, played with them a little bit, and my boys close played with them, and hopefully some grandsons play with them too. That's just the longest running senior team in Alberta.
What's your longest running now? Wait. In senior in Alberta, Irma Aces are the longest running?
Consecutive.
Really? That's something. Because, one of the things about running a senior team, so that jersey right there on the wall, sorry folks, you won't be able to see it, is the Hillmont Hitman, actually.
Yeah, that's pretty much
there. I'm pointing at it for people who are watching.
That is mean looking.
So they were the Hillmont All-Stars when my dad played for them. And then when they came back in the league, there was already an All-Stars team and, a bunch of, maybe they wanted to differentiate themselves. I don't know why, because I think the history is what it's all about. Anyways, they started up the Hitman. Hitman been going since 2008. But one of the things you start to see in senior hockey specifically, because there's no big money in it, right? Everybody's playing for the love of the game, volunteers, on and on and on. When you say they're the longest consecutively running team, that's something to hang your hat on. Yeah. So anybody who's a part of that organization, that's something. How does that come to be? Because there's lots of great senior hockey organizations. We played against Wilkie. And Wilkie, I forget how many years they've been going. Is it 100? Is it 80? It's a high number in Saskatchewan. And I think I remember playing them, and they were good. And being like, how did they get that many generations of people to buy into volunteering and keeping the organization going? Because you can have tough years. You can have years when you suck.
Yep.
And everybody wants to hang it up and be like, no more, we're done. You see it how many times, and it's ebbs and flows, it's cycles. You're going to have strong teams, you're going to have weak teams.
Yep.
And the goal probably is when you're really bad to find a way to muddle through so you keep the team going, because once the team goes away, you don't know if you're going to get it back because it takes a ton of effort to get it up and running again.
Yeah.
So how did Irma do that? Or how is Irma doing that?
Well, I don't know if there's any one secret. I mean, it's been dedication. There's been a couple of sketchy years in there. I think the year I played, that was almost ready to shut her down. And I was 43 when I played with them that year. But there were some young guys in after that. A bunch of young guys come up and started. They'd all respect your minor hockey, really, and I don't, though there's a lot of people in Irma don't remember Irma not having an Aces team, and so I don't know. It's something that it's been, like you said, you got to be proud of it, because it's a heritage now, and then I know there's lots of teams around that have come and gone, and then they maybe skip a couple of years and come back, but it's
tough.
It is tough.
Well, I think of the SaskAlta when it was going, right? Wainwright would have been in that.
Yeah.
And at the height, we had 14 teams, and now I think they're back down to, I think it's 8.
Yeah.
And the ebbs and flows of teams coming in and leaving is, usually two try and get in and two try and leave almost every single year.
Yeah.
And at the start, as a young guy, you think, good, get them out, whatever. They don't want to play. But the longer I go, I'm like, man, as soon as one leaves, you don't know if you're ever getting them back in.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. And it is, like it's volunteers. You're there you're playing for fun, and that's rough hockey.
Well, I tell you what, that night when we won the championship, it had been 37 years, I think. It had been 37 years since Hillmond had hoisted a championship. And I got out-partied that night by 7-year-olds that remember and were a part of the team that won in 1978. And it was such a... If I could have bottled up that night...
Yeah.
Because it was so special to everybody involved.
Yeah.
And small-town hockey, that's still alive and well, You hope communities never lose that, because it was a very special thing to be a part of.
Yeah, no doubt. As for some of them in there too. I mean, some of my old friends that started out. I used to go in as a kid and watch them, and I remember Butch Fisher playing, and there, Gene Schreier was probably one of the better defensemen I ever watched play in my life as far as around these teams. Wasn't a heavy hitter, but he had a head in his shoulders. But you go into the arena, they didn't just play weekends. I mean, he played Wednesday night, I think, Wednesday, and it's 2 games a week, and the arena would be packed.
Yeah.
The arena would be packed. And now it's, they still get pretty good draw, but it's different. It's different, but there's so many distractions, and you got how many? That time there was 6 NHL teams, and now it seems like there's 36. I don't know, that there's a lot of them, and everybody's.
Well, you can get a game every single night of the week.
Yeah, you can watch
it went from Saturday nights, and
Yeah, what's on? Who's playing tonight?
Yeah.
They might miss a Monday, but that's about it. So yeah, it's we're busy lifestyle.
Yeah.
Busy lifestyle.
Nancy asked, what's your favorite or best prank you ever pulled on someone?
No, that goes back to hockey. I think that would probably one rates about the highest, or one up there. We were playing with I played rec hockey with the Manville Roadrunners, and we were playing in a tournament in Two Hills, and our neighbor Eddie Schrader was he was in town, and he was late getting up there and whatever, but he'd left his 3-ton truck. He had a cab over for it and left it over at I think it was a wheat pool. It doesn't matter if it was a wheat pool or UDG, but anyhow, and you load that up with bag fertilizer. I got to go play hockey. So he gets home, and then he's in there, and he's telling us this story, and then, them boys, they were loading my truck for me. So Jimmy Barse and I were we were driving in our own vehicle, and he was with another guy. So after the game, and I think we were going to play again the next morning, so we got to get home, and so we scooted her back to Manville about as hard as we could go. So we got there in time, and so Jimmy hopped up in the truck, and he's firing bags down, and I stuffed the cab. And for that old cab over Ford, and we had it right full. There wasn't room for the driver, nothing. So I guess, you get out of there, you don't stick around. So the next day we're sitting in a dressing room in Two Hills, and he was ragging, those rotten buggers, he said. They went and they were mad because they had to fill my truck, and they filled my cab right full of bags of fertilizer. He said, I had to take that all out of there by myself and try and get it up into the box. And we never said a word. It was a lot of years before we relied on that had happened to him. But so he had to go in and apologize. And he went in the next day and chewed him out for what they'd done. They sat there with blank fix on their face. But there's been a few. I guess that was probably one of the better ones. Or clean fun. Yeah, clean fun. You remember them. You remember them, and I think he did too. But yeah,
Any
I had a few enough. There was enough pulled on me too, so it all evened out.
Any not final, I had a guest on the podcast just say this recently, because not final thoughts on life or anything, but final thoughts for this, because obviously life carries on after this. So if you got family watching this and you wanted to give them one final thought on your life or on this chat or on things in the future, things across your life, what would you say?
Well, I know it's been like deer in the headlights for him for some of the stuff that I've gone through, and it's hard to, my thought for them, I just pray the Lord has as much patience with them as he did with me. Plain and simple. I got a little poem here I'd like to read. Those no's from your mouth can be 1,000,000 times deployed, and when the answer turns to yes, all those no's are null and void. And take it from someone the Lord's truth for years denied, and just once I surrendered, then he changed me inside. That surrender didn't mean defeat. That was the moment the Lord made me complete, realizing those arguing years came at such a cost, and all he wanted was to show me I was lost. For all those years beside me stayed. Then one euphoric moment, he said my cost was paid. That's what I want them to enjoy. That's no more greater enjoyment than see somebody come to know him. I don't know what else to say. I'm. It's funny how this has turned out. As I've thought many times, I watched Mom, and she died in 2004, and I come to know the Lord in 2006. So she went without seeing me come. And I said, boy, maybe I can leave something behind that they'll touch them when sometimes it's easier to listen when they're not here. So I got to say thank you to Nancy. She blew me away when she, what are you doing? So, and yeah, I don't know. It's life's a journey. Life's a journey, and it's when you get a hold of him, it's the roadmap.
Well, that is a way to end it, sir. I appreciate you allowing me to be part of your journey. This has been, and maybe to capture a couple of the thoughts. Appreciate the family enduring some of my indulgences in the conversation, because
That's great.
One of the things I can't help myself in here is, like, as soon as you're in my realm, it's you're along for a ride, or maybe I'm along for the ride. I don't know, but either way, appreciate you coming in, Alfred, and doing this.